In this PowerPoint, let's look at Chapter 4 for Info 1105, and this will be the last chapter in your Access textbook that we'll be covering. So in Chapter 4, we look at creating and using forms and reports. So we're going to move past tables and queries now. We're going to take a look at using forms and reports. So let's start with forms. First of all, the form basics. So most Access database applications use forms rather than tables to enter data and to find information. A form is a database object that's used to add data or edit data in a table. So instead of going right into the table to add or edit data, we use forms. And by changing data in the form or adding data in the form, we also add the same data and change the same data in the tables. So 3 reasons for using forms. You're less likely to edit the wrong record by mistake. You can create a form that shows data from more than one table at the same time. So if you need to change data from more than one table, instead of opening up all those tables in which you need to change the data in, you just go to one form and change the data there, and that change will be made in all the different tables that it affects. You can create Access forms to resemble the paper online forms that users employ in their data entry processes. This makes it a much more smoother process. There's less errors. So when you're adding or editing data by using a table with so many records, you may navigate to the wrong record accidentally. A form is less likely to allow this kind of error because the forms restrict entry to only one record at a time. You can change records from 2 tables in one place. For example, you might want to view a customer's details like the name, address, email, phone number, etc., and all the orders that he or she has placed at the same time. This requires using data from the customers table and the orders table in one form. So such a form enables a user to view 2 record sources at the same time and make changes like adding or editing or deleting to both sources of data, to both tables. So when a change is made in the form, then the data in underlying tables then are affected. And you don't have to open up 2 tables. And lastly, you can design it to look like paper forms. Access forms can be designed to emulate the paper documents already used by an organization. So if there's like some branding, colors, or style that you want to use, the layout, that can all be emulated in the Access form. When paper forms are used to collect data, it's a good idea to design the electronic forms to resemble the paper forms. This makes the data entry process more efficient, and it eases the transition from paper form to electronic form. When the user is more eased into doing something, they do it better. So the next topic we're going to look at is creating forms using the form tools. Access provides 14 different tools for creating forms. So you develop a preference for 1 or 2 types of these form layouts. You want your forms to balance ease of use with the power to be effective. So remember that a form is always changing. Creating a form from a collaborative process between the database designer and the end users. Okay, so it takes both the designer and the user to be engaged and involved in this process. This process continues throughout the life of the form because the data of an organization may change over time. Forms designed long ago to collect data for a new customer account may not have included an email or website field, but now it needs it, right? So you always have to be, so this is an example of having to update a form to include new fields that will come up. Make sure that the designer listens to the users. The designer needs to strike a balance between collecting the data required for use by the database and cluttering the form with too many fields. The database users generally offer opinions about which fields should be on the form and how the form should behave. So listen to their suggestions. You are making the form for the users after all. So if you listen to what's needed, your forms will function more effectively, the user's work will be easier, and the data will have less errors. So as with any planning, sketch the form first after discussing the form with the users. it'll help you create the form in Access if you sketch the form first, right? You have a better idea of which form tool to use to create the form. After the form is created, then use a sketch to determine which fields are required and what order the fields should be in. So before you create a form, after you've sketched one out and you're ready to create a form, you must first identify the record source. What's a record source? This is a table or query that supplies the records for the form or report. Use a table if you want to include all the records from a single table. But create a query as the record source first if you need to filter the records in the source table or combine records from 2 or more related tables, or if you don't want to display all the fields from the table on your form. So for example, if a sales rep wants to create a form that displays customers from a single state only where his customers reside, he or she should base the form on a query. All right, so let's pause here to watch the video tutorial on how to use the form tool. Next, let's take a look at understanding controls. Controls are the text boxes, buttons, labels, and other tools that you want to add, edit, and display the data in the form or in a report. So the layout control provides guides to help controls aligned horizontally and vertically to give your form a neat appearance. There may be times when you will select controls in order to format, delete, or move them during your design process. So let's take a little break here, take a look at the video tutorial on using controls and layout controls. And when you're done, please come back to the PowerPoint. Next, let's look at working with form views. There are 3 different views of a form available. Okay, there is the form view, which is the user interface primarily used for data entry and modification. You can't make changes to the form layout or design in the form view though. Okay, so this is only for data entry. Next, we have the layout view. The layout view enables you to make changes to the layout while viewing the data in the form. So it's useful for testing the functionality of the form and adjusting the sizes of controls like the text boxes and labels as needed as you're viewing the data. Then finally, we have the design view. And the design view lets you change advanced design settings, which is not available in the layout view, such as removing a layout control. It gives you more control over the form design. Many forms can be made by toggling back and forth between the layout view for modifications and the form view for usability testing. So unless you really want to change something quite advanced, you don't need to go into the design view. Next, we're going to talk about working with a subform. When you use the form tool to create a form, Access analyzes the table relationships in the database. If the table that the main form is based on is related to another table, Access automatically adds a subform in the main form. The subform displays records in the related table, generally laid out in a datasheet format. So for example, you have a sales reps stored in sales reps table and related customer information stored in customers table, right? So if you create a new form based on the sales rep table using the form tool, Access will add customer subform to the bottom of the main form, displaying all the customers assigned to each of the sales reps. So at times you might want the subform to be part of your form. At other times you might want to remove it if it's not relevant to the requirements of the form design. Okay, so this is an example of it's kind of hard to see here, but here's the subform displaying related records here. Okay, this is the subform down here. So let's watch the video tutorial on how to remove a subform from a form and basically just to look at how this whole subform thing works. When you're done with this tutorial video, please come back to the PowerPoint. Next, let's take a look at creating a split form. A split form combines 2 views of the same record source. By default, the top section is displayed in a stacked layout, which is the form view, and the bottom section is displayed in a tabular layout, which is a datasheet view. So if you select a record in the top section of the form view, the same record will be selected in the bottom section of the form and vice versa. So let's watch the video tutorial on creating a split form. When you're done, please come back to this PowerPoint. Next, Let's talk about creating multiple items form. A multiple items form displays multiple records in the tabular layout, similar to a table's datasheet view. Multiple items form can provide you with more customization options than a datasheet, like the ability to add graphical elements and buttons. So please watch the video tutorial on creating multiple items form, and when you're done, please come back to this video. Next, creating forms using the other form tools. A datasheet form is a replica of a table or query's datasheet view, except that it allows form properties to be set to control the behavior of the form. So for example, if you create a datasheet form to display data in a table, like format, but you don't change the form's property so as not to allow the record to be deleted. So this protects the data from accidental deletions while providing users with a familiar datasheet view. Next, the form properties. A form's property sheet enables you to control the behavior and formatting of controls in your forms. So to access the property sheet from layout view or design view, click property sheet in the tools group on the design tab. Okay, so at the top of the property sheet, use the list arrow to select a control. You'll see multiple tabs containing many individual attributes of the control that you can change. For example, the format tab contains options for changing the style. The form design tool and the blank form tools can be used to create forms manually from scratch in the design view or the layout view, okay, respectively. So use these form types if you want to have complete control over your form's design. So let's watch the video tutorial to kind of process the last few slides, what we learned about the form design tool and the blank forms tools. And when you're done, please come back to this PowerPoint video. Next, let's talk about the navigation commands, which is in the forms group. The navigation commands lets you create user interfaces that have the look and feel of web-based forms. They also enable you to, or users, to open and close the objects of a database. So you can create a form that enables users to click buttons for various forms and reports that you want them to view in the database. So this simplifies the database navigation for those who are not familiar with Access, and is also useful for setting up Access database on the internet. The Modal Dialog form tool can be used to create a dialog box. It's useful when you need to gather information from the user, and also it's very useful to provide information to the user in forms of messages. Dialog boxes are common in all Microsoft Office applications. And next we're going to talk about printing. Remember to print with caution. You can print a form by clicking print option on the file tab, of course, but do be careful printing a form, printing form from a form. Forms are not generally designed for printing, so you may end up with hundreds of pages of printouts. So make sure that you choose the selected records option. This will only print the current record or the selected records. Okay, so that's what it will look like. So make sure that you check selected, not all. You might have hundreds and hundreds of printed material. Okay, so Access provides views for a form, 3 different views: layout, form, and design views. Okay, so when creating and modifying forms, you need to switch between the 3 form views. Much of your design work can be done in the layout view, but sometimes you need to switch to design view to use more advanced features, right? Users of the form would typically only work in the form view. So use form view to edit data. The form view to add, edit, and delete data in a form. The layout and design of the form cannot be changed in this view. So this is only for people to enter or modify data. Please watch the video tutorial on how to use form view to edit data. Next, we're going to look at using layout view to modify the form design. So the data is not editable in this view, okay? You can use layout view to add or delete fields in a form, change the order of the fields, modify or field or form properties, or change the control widths, and enhance the form by adding a style or a theme. So reviewing the data in layout view, though, makes it easier to size controls. You know how big to make controls and to ensure that all data is visible in the form view. So you can toggle back and forth between layout and form view when making changes to the form's design. Next, adjusting column widths in a form. So when column widths are adjusted in a form with a stacked layout, all the field sizes will increase and decrease in size altogether. So make sure that the columns are wide enough to accommodate the widest value in the field. For example, if a form contains information like email address, you need to make sure that the longest email address is completely visible. So please watch the video tutorial on adjusting column widths in a form. Next, let's talk about adding and deleting form fields. There'll be times where you want to add or delete form fields. At times, new fields may be added and then need to be incorporated into forms. Other times, you may decide that a field is present in the table and is not really necessary or useful to display it to users in the form. So please watch the video tutorial on how to add and delete form fields. Next, I want to talk about adding a theme to a form. A theme can give the form a more professional appearance. A theme is a defined set of colors, fonts, and graphics that can be applied to forms or reports. So please watch the video tutorial on adding theme to a form. Next, let's talk about modifying form controls. When you view a form in a layout view, the Form Layout View Tools tab displays the Design, Arrange, and Format tabs. The Format tab contains a series of commands that enable you to change the font, display, and alignment of the controls on the form. So sometimes you might want to change the formatting of one or more controls. Okay, it's always more useful when we actually watch, the video tutorial that shows you in Access where all these tools are. So please watch the video tutorial on how to modify the form controls. When you're done, please come back to the PowerPoint. Next, working with a form layout. When you use one of the form tools to create a new form, Access adds a layout control to help align the field. So the layout control helps the controls to be aligned in order to give your form a neat appearance. The layout control gives a structure for the fields, but is restrictive. So if you want to have more control over the locations of your fields, you can remove the layout control and position the controls manually on the form. So please watch the video tutorial on how to remove a control from a layout and reposition it. Next, modifying a form layout. You can use the tools in the Arrange tab to change the layout of a form, to move fields up and down, to control margins. The Arrange tab displays in both the Layout and Design view. So please watch the video tutorial on how to apply and change the layout of a form and how to remove a form layout control. Next, let's talk about sorting records in a form. When a form is created using a form tool, the sort order of the records in the form is dependent initially on the sort order of the record source or the underlying table or query. Okay, so I repeat that. When a form is created using the form tool, the sort order of the records in that form is dependent on the sort order of that record source, the record source being the table or the query. So tables are usually sorted by the primary key, okay? But queries are generally sorted in a variety of ways. Okay, no matter how the records are initially sorted, you can modify the sort order in a form. So please watch the video tutorial on how to sort by a single field. Next, let's move on to reports. Okay, so first we'll talk about the report basics. A report is a document that displays information from a database in a format that outputs meaningful information to its readers. So a report gives you meaningful information to the reader. So if you think about writing a science report or a consumer report or some kind of school report, it's the same thing here. A report is a document that gives useful and meaningful information. So Access reports can be printed, viewed on screen, or even saved as files like Word documents. You can't use reports to change data in your database. A report is designed for output of information only based on the data from tables or queries in your database. So if based on your record sources, it just gives the output. Unlike a form, with a form you can change the data and then that change is reflected in the tables, but with a report you cannot do that. It's only an output. So examples of reports are a telephone directory sorted by last name, a customer report, an employee list, a monthly statement from a bank, a bill or invoice, a set of mailing labels. So those are all examples of reports. So reports are used to help the reader understand and analyze information. In a report, you can group the customers together for each sales rep and highlight the customers who haven't placed an order in 6 months. So to increase business, the sales rep could contact their customers who have not ordered in the 6 months, and then review the findings, right, with the sales manager. Then a sales report can be run each month to see if the strategy to drum up more business has worked. So moving on, you're going to learn to create reports by first identifying a record source, designing the report, and then choosing a report tool. You're going to learn to modify a report by adding and deleting fields, resizing columns, and adding a theme. And then you're also going to learn about report sections, report views, and controls on reports. So first, let's look at the 5 report tools. There's the report tool, report design tool, the blank report tool, the report wizard tool, and the labels tool. Okay, we'll look at it in more detail. But first of all, let's just see the summary. The report tool instantly creates a tabular report based on a selected table or query. The report design tool creates a new blank report in the design view. The blank report tool also creates a new report in the layout view by inserting fields and controls manually to design a report. The report wizard tool prompts you through a series of step-by-step screens, as most wizards do, and it helps you create the report based on your selections. The labels tool creates printable labels using one of the pre-formatted templates provided by Access. So before you create a report in Access, you should consider the following questions. What's the purpose of the report? Who's going to use the report? Which tables, queries, and fields are needed for the report? How will the report be distributed? And will users view the report directly from the Access database, or are they going to get it through email, fax, or internet? Will the results be converted to Word, Excel, HTML, and other formats? So the first step, of course, is to identify the record source. You can use one or more tables, queries, or a combination as the record source. When the data from multiple related tables are needed to create a report, you can then create a single query and then base the report on that query. Multiple tables used in the query must be related, as indicated with joint arrows, right? Joined lines, I mean. The report tool. The easiest way to create a report is with the report tool. It's used to create a tabular report based on a selected table or query. So please watch the video tutorial on using the report tool. Next, we'll look at using the report wizard. The report wizard prompts you for input through a series of steps to generate a customized report. The wizard lets you make certain customizations quickly and easily without having to be an expert in report design. So please watch the video tutorial and come back to the PowerPoint. Next, using report views. As you create and modify reports, you might want to switch between the 4 report views in Access, which is report, layout, design, and print. Report and print are generally used only for viewing or printing the report. To make modifications, use layout or design view. Most of the design work can be done in the layout view. Design view is necessary for applying more advanced features and changes. So to view a report in a report view enables you to view a report on screen in a continuous page layout. The data can't be changed in a report view. It's just a way of viewing the info without having to worry about accidentally moving a control. You can also use the report view to filter data if needed. Next, we have the print preview. The print preview lets you see exactly what the report will look like when it's printed. You can't modify the design of the report or the data in print preview. So by default, print preview is going to display all the pages in the report. Next, let's talk about exporting. From the print preview, you can export or save the report from a different file like Excel, Word, or PDF. This is useful if you want to share a report electronically, but you don't want to distribute the entire database. So the PDF is a file type that was used for exchanging documents independently of software applications and operating system environments. You can email a report in PDF to users who are running on different operating systems, and they can open it even if they don't have Microsoft Access. PDF files open in Adobe Reader, a free downloadable program. So altering a report in layout view. Use the layout view to alter the report design while still viewing the data. You should use layout view to add, delete fields in report, modify field properties, change the column widths, group, sort, and summarize data. So the page setup tab presents these options for setting the page size, orientation, and margins. Although you can view your modifications with the data in the layout view, you must check the report and print preview place to evaluate all the changes before printing it. So modifying a report. After you create a report by using one of the report tools, you might want to modify it. Some of the common changes you make in a report are adding and deleting controls, changing the environment, arrangement, widths, formatting of controls, and the title, right? So there's 4 tabs for report modification. There's design, arrange, and format. Use design to make changes to the design of the report, like adding fields, grouping, sorting, changing themes, inserting additional controls. The arrange uses to change the layout of the report to move fields up and down, control margins and spacing. And with the format, use this to work with font sizes, colors, add, move bolding and underlining, text alignment, and things like that, or to add a background image or color. With the page setup, you can change paper size, margins, page orientation, and format reports into multiple columns. So please watch the video tutorial on modifying the layout of a report, modifying report controls, adding a field to a report, deleting a field from a report, adjusting column widths in a report, changing margins and orientation, adding a theme to the report. Next, let's look at working with a report layout control. When you use one of the report tools to create a new report, Access will add a layout control to help align the fields. So layout control in reports work similarly to layout controls in forms. They provide guides to help keep controls aligned horizontally and vertically to give your report a neat appearance. So if you want to have more control over the location of your fields, you can remove the layout control and position the controls manually on the report. So please watch the video tutorial on working with a report layout control. Next, let's talk about sorting records in a report. When a report is created using a report tool, the sort order of the records in the report is, again, initially dependent on the sort order from the record source, so the table of the query. So similar to the way records are sorted in the form, the primary key of the record source usually controls the sort order. Okay, a report has an additional feature for sorting. The report has the group, sort, and total pane at the bottom of the report. This pane enables you to group records together and to override the sort order in the report's record source. So if you don't use the report wizard, this is generally how you would add groupings and totals to a report. So to change the sorting in a report, sorting is important because a sorting by a primary key is probably not going to be intuitive. So sorting by a field like last name is probably a better choice as opposed to customer ID, right? So users can locate the records in an alphabetical order by the last name. The customer ID, the unique primary key, doesn't really make much sense to them. So please watch the video tutorial on changing the sorting in a report, and that is your final video tutorial for the day.